Hello, my name is Ryan Hulbert. I work as a psychologist and have a deep love for people. The purpose of this presentation is to help you understand who I am personally and professionally, share with you some resources I've developed to help individuals, families, and neighborhoods, and let you know the benefits that a person, family, or neighborhood may gain from using these resources. You'll see how these resources have blossomed out of my personal, family, and professional experiences and opportunities. First, let me tell you a little bit of my roots. Here's a circle chart that I have developed. Learning about my ancestry has been a love of mine since my teenage years. And as far as we know so far, my ancestry comes from the British Isles, Scandinavia, and Europe. On my father's side of the family, the Hulbert line first came to the United States in 1735 and settled in Connecticut. My great-grandfather, Levi W. Hulbert, as a young man with a friend and business partner, brought a herd of horses to South Dakota and settled initially in a little valley which is still known as Hulbert Gulch. Years ago, while in graduate school in Lincoln, Nebraska, my wife and I excitedly took our young children to an extended family reunion in South Dakota, which was a marvelous connecting with our family and our heritage. No one has lived in Hulbert Gulch since that initial stay by my great-grandfather, and thus a foundation of bricks which we found were undoubtedly from him. I have one of those bricks here, which I love to have my children and grandchildren touch, to know that they're connecting with their great-great-grandfather. My grandfather, Vernon Ezra Hulbert, was a World War I veteran and eventually settled in Twin Falls, Idaho. His teenage son, my father, Melvin Wagner Hulbert, first saw my mother in about the 8th grade when he moved to Twin Falls, where she had grown up. They became high school sweethearts and were separated by World War II when my father joined the Navy. Here's a precious picture of them prior to him leaving to serve on a submarine in the Atlantic, approximately 1942. I was the 4th child born with 2 older brothers and an older sister. After 10 years of marriage, my father desired to be a missionary, and he was called to spend weekends on the Duck Valley Indian Reservation, which is about 4 hours south of Boise on the border of Idaho and Nevada. My mother shared with me that with 3 children ages 9 through 4, and me being a newborn, she was at times resentful of him being gone on weekends. She also said that he came home so excited and enthusiastic about these wonderful, friendly people that she couldn't help but support him. One Sunday afternoon, upon returning home, my dad was proud to show a cradle board one of the women on the reservation had made for his new son, me. I was put in that cradle board. He held me up in it, and a picture was taken. Here is that same cradle board. A copy of the picture of my dad holding me has a special significance to me. He died when I was 5 months old, and it's the only picture I'm aware of with just he and I together. I have the privilege of helping on the Duck Valley Reservation, and in a recent newspaper article shows the original picture of Dad holding me in the cradle board, the woman who made the board, and then me in that picture. After a period of grief, my mother used my dad's $10,000 life insurance policy to pay off our little house and set about to support the family. She did a lot of things for work, but what I remember most was selling World Book Encyclopedia. I remember helping to unbox these huge boxes of books for shipments which had been ordered. And we had our own set, which I just about wore out the A volume of, looking at all the pictures of the animals. She was a woman of great faith from a pioneer heritage lineage and taught me to have faith, love learning, and often told me when I left home, remember who you are and look for the lonely. As I mentioned, I had a passion for animals, and my mother supported us in our various interests. And I had many traditional pets such as dogs, cats, guinea pigs, rabbits, pigeons. And I even had a pet store in my bedroom for the neighborhood kids who came by to buy pollywogs and lizards and snakes and other critters. One of my brothers bought me a pet raccoon. And as a teenager, I was an amateur falconer with a red-tailed hawk and also completed a taxidermy correspondence course. I thought for sure I was going to have a career involved with animals, such as a veterinarian or some kind of wildlife researcher. As my youth progressed, my faith in Jesus Christ continued to grow, and I also developed a strong desire to be a missionary. I was called to serve for 2 years in the Flemish-speaking portion of northern Belgium and had an amazing deepening of my faith and love for those wonderful people. Those experiences became a major influence for me to want to work more directly with people as a career someday. Following my mission, as a 21-year-old, I returned to college at Brigham Young University. Upon dropping me off at college, my mother's last advice to me was, don't fall in love with the first girl you take out. Well, I think that was the first time I ever blatantly disobeyed my mother. I did fall in love with Teresa McCormick, have been married for 43 years so far, and we've been blessed with 5 sons, followed by 2 daughters and their spouses, and now 20+ grandchildren. My wife and I were raising our children while in college, and after not being successful my first year applying to graduate school, I took the best job I could in the helping profession and became an alcoholism counselor. This was 1980, and at that time, traditional psychology hadn't accepted spirituality as an important component of the healing process. But within the field of alcoholism treatment, reliance on a higher power and using the whole body, mind, and spirit in the healing process were emphasized. Thus, a year later, when I began graduate school at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, I had already seen the power of using reliance on a higher power as a foundation for healing and deep positive change. I had amazing training in clinical psychology and 2 subspecialties of alcoholism treatment and rural community mental health. The community mental health training emphasized viewing the whole community as a resource of support and also focused on prevention and resiliency building. Through my comprehensive training, I was prepared to be able to conduct psychological evaluations, do psychotherapy, and research. Early in my time in Lincoln, I took a break from my studies, went to the University Administration Building, and I saw a flyer on the bulletin board for opportunities for research in Belgium. I had longed to go back to where I had been a missionary. I shared this information with my wife, and we filed it away as probably just a pipe dream. Several years later, as I began to plan for my dissertation research, I was reminded about that research fellowship and began to look into it. One of the main requirements for this research was finding a university professor in Belgium willing to sponsor my area of interest in research. My master's project was on the therapeutic effects of touching animals. And through looking at a brochure of professors willing to sponsor researchers, such as myself, there was no logical match. At that same time, I was preparing for my comprehensive examinations, and to prepare, I was encouraged by my professors to draw upon the main themes that I had been trained in. One Saturday morning, in the basement of the psychology department building, I took a short break from my studies, and while relaxing, had a marvelous peak experience in which it seemed as if everything I'd ever learned began to form patterns in my mind. I took notes, drew pictures, and felt an amazing onset of peace, love, and confidence. So evident was the change in me after this experience that one of my professors asked me to write about my new understanding as a sort of take-home examination question. I entitled that summary, Connectedness Theory. It had to do with how our well-being is interdependent on multiple levels of connectedness in our lives, starting with the most basic physical resources of connection, such as the soil and nature and animals, and expanding to our immediate family, extended family, community, and so forth. Also in the description were enticings by both divine and evil influences as part of our process of becoming who we were meant to be. As amazing as that experience was in and of itself, I wondered if somehow the experience may also be an encouragement to continue pursuing the possible research fellowship in Belgium. This time, as I reviewed the booklet of sponsoring professors and their research interests, my eyes fell upon the University of Leuven Research Center for Motivation and Time Perspective. The role of time perspective and our views of our past, present, and future were a main portion of my peak experience. And the research fellowship then fell quickly into place. While in Belgium, I became immersed in the research related to time perspective from a number of vantage points, and specifically in relation to the time perspective of alcoholics while they're in recovery. My hypothesis was that persons recovering from alcoholism would have their time perspective become more future-oriented as they progressed in their recovery. I didn't find this to be the case, however, and learned that the common notion of living one day at a time was not only vital in stopping the abuse of alcohol, but became a satisfying way of life for these individuals, contributing to their feeling a greater connectedness with others, the natural environment, and with God. Upon returning to the United States, I still had one more year in Nebraska, and then another year in Tucson, Arizona for an internship at the VA hospital. While in Arizona, I was able to receive experiences at a nearby Indian reservation to fulfill my desire to hopefully better learn how to help Native Americans. My first job as a psychologist was at the beautiful castle-like state hospital of Cherokee Mental Health Institute in Cherokee, Iowa. While there, I met a psychiatrist, Bill Pettit, who was full of enthusiasm concerning a set of understandings of helping people tap into their innate worth and strengths. I became a diligent student of this, and through that was taught that all persons have strength within them, that strength cannot be killed, it can be crimped, and that there are ways to help that strength become uncrimped, and thus experience the natural health and wisdom that they have. From my frame of reference, I recognized this definition as all persons being given the gift of the light of Christ to help them recognize and respond to truth. This led to about a 10-year process of developing these concepts from a Christ-centered view, using them in therapy and in presentations, and ultimately writing a book entitled The Sun is Always Shining, with the subtitle, Renewing Your Heart and Mind Through the Light of Christ. Here's a copy of that book. I shared it with Bill Pettit, and he in turn shared the book with Dr. Virgil A. Wood, a 10-year working associate with Martin Luther King Jr., and then continued to work with Martin Luther King Sr. for an additional 16 years. Dr. Wood has become a dear friend and mentor. He turns 90 years old on April 6th, 2021, and has worked for over 50 years since Martin Luther King Jr.'s death to renew the movement to help heal the soul of America. During the last 40 years, since that first experience as an alcoholism counselor, I have worked on the deep end of psychological problems and addictions in a state hospital, prison, substance abuse treatment centers, juvenile corrections, psychiatric facilities, and outpatient clinics. My training prepared me to work with people with a severe level of disorders, but over time my passion became attempting to build resiliency and where possible to prevent such problems. I frankly became not discouraged, but passionate about doing what I could to keep those problems from getting even more severe. I hope that this summary of some of my personal and professional experiences will help in describing now resources I've developed for individuals, families, and communities to help harness the inner strength in all of us, and to provide practical methods of finding and using those strengths. I'll briefly list and describe those resources. The first, again, was The Sun is Always Shining. Here's a copy in both English and Spanish, and it's almost finished being translated into Dutch. From 2001 to 2009, I served as the statewide clinical services administrator for the Idaho Department of Juvenile Corrections. As a state employee, I couldn't use a faith-based resource such as The Sun is Always Shining, so I used the same powerful concepts related to time perspective and innate health, and I wrote a youth-friendly short storyline book entitled Driver's Ed for the Brain, with the subtitle Finding Greater Peace and Joy. I've been very pleased that it's become a helpful resource for people of various language groups and ages. It's been translated so far into about 10 languages, such as Spanish, Russian, Arabic, Hindi, Mandarin Chinese, German, Swahili, Afrikaans, and Braille. I've also developed it into an online course, complete with self-reflection assignments and videos to enhance the core concepts of each chapter. Most rewarding are comments from teenagers who, after reading it, have asked me to write more books, but this time make them longer. A grant was received by the Idaho Department of Health and Welfare to use the Arabic translation of the book for a refugee woman support group book club type of format, where each of the 6 chapters were reviewed each week. I excitedly heard from the facilitator of the group after the first 6 of the classes that the women really found that they were learning helpful things, but none of them had ever driven a vehicle before. So they had to do some basic explanations of a stick shift and so forth. In response to the request to have more books, I've written 2 sequels to Driver's Ed for the brain, each of them based on the training by a fictional psychologist named Dr. Freda. By the way, Freda is an Americanized spelling of the Dutch word for peace. The second book in this series is entitled Growth Rings, with the subtitle Becoming the Person You Are Meant to Be. The third and last in this short little series is entitled Which Came First, the Soul or the Ego? These have been combined in both English and Spanish so far into a book entitled The Dr. Freda Workshops. I'm currently working with a grant from the Idaho Liquor Commission to have high schoolers take 3 mini courses related to these books as a means of building resiliency to alcohol abuse. Also, while working for the Juvenile Corrections Department, I wanted to develop an innovative way of helping young people recognize the importance of developing both internal strengths and building a support team around themselves. This resulted in a grant from the Eli Lilly Foundation to produce a game I invented entitled the Support Team Game. Show you a picture of it here. As you can see, it's modeled after a football field, or if I make it into Spanish, it would be, or other languages, would be modeled after a soccer field. And it's based on the 40 developmental assets from the Search Institute that talk about external assets and internal assets to help you reach happy and successful adulthood and not get driven back into detention and jail and prison. Working with Dr. Wood, I've learned much about the concept of a beloved community. This is a society where people support each other and are concerned about each other's welfare educationally, financially, socially, and spiritually. I produced several versions of a stool as an object lesson to show how that person, family, culture, and community all can be enhanced and influence each other. And if those are raised up by 4 legs to a higher level of health, biologically, socially, psychologically, the 4th leg is the invisible one, the spiritual, and it's what's helping hold everything up. I've also learned that, and have made a version of a beloved economy supporting the whole system of the beloved community. Together, Dr. Wood and I have produced a beautiful medallion-like coin with the stool symbol. Let me see if I can find that. I think it's right here. That all may be one, think globally, act locally, the beloved community resting on the beloved economy as a foundation. We also produced another beautiful coin with one side showing an eagle breaking free to free the dream of a beloved community, and the talon of the other talon of the eagle are 5 wheat stalks, each with a different color, symbolizing the different colors of mankind. On the other side of the coin is the Liberty Bell, with the inscription that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And around the edge of the coin is the statement by Martin Luther King Jr. that a person will be judged by the content of his or her character and not by the color of their skin. I have produced a website entitled driversedforthebrain.com with videos, articles, self-assessments, and recently a learning center for delivering online courses. A special application has also been created through which individuals and families can become beloved community neighbors. This is all at no cost and provides them with a beautiful certificate with their name imported on it, with a pledge that they're asked to take, and they become a beloved community neighbor and also are able to download The Sun is Always Shining and Driver's Ed for the Brain at no cost in either English or Spanish. Dr. Wood and I reprinted his book entitled In Love We Still Trust, Lessons We Learned from Martin Luther King Jr. and Sr., including an article which he and I co-authored having to do with, I'll read the title for you here, Martin Luther King and Joseph, Discovering and Setting Free God's Dream, referring to Joseph, the son of Jacob, highlighting the coin and our wonderful relationship. Another foundational aspect of Dr. Wood's emphasis on healing the soul of America is related to the Jubilee concept. In the Old Testament, the Jubilee was experienced every 50 years. 49, 7 times 7, 49 plus 1 equals 50, and was a time of renewal in which slaves were freed, debts were forgiven, and God was honored. Inherent in the Jubilee is the honoring of the Sabbath day, a sacred day every 7 days. In my ongoing attempts to take concepts and form them into a tangible strengthening tool, I have created what I call the Beloved Community Sacred Days calendar for families to use. Let me show you my first attempt at it for my own family. The symbolism is that everything revolves around the sun, meaning the Son of God. Because of this, each of these little divots representing 1 week has Easter at the top as the most sacred holiday of the year. Each little divot, as I mentioned, represents a week, and so there are 52 weeks, 52 celebrations that can take place when a sacred day is honored each week. In addition, I've indicated other holidays that could be celebrated according to the family. And at the appropriate place, I've indicated the names of my wife and I, our children, their spouses, and our grandchildren, and our anniversary. I think I totaled up 52 plus 16 birthdays of the next generation, 20 plus for the next generation, and the holidays equaled 98 days of celebration in any given calendar year. But then when you think about each day being a wonderful event, and especially using the scripture, this is the day the Lord has made. Rejoice and be glad in it. Just another attempt that I've made to focus on the most important things of God, family, and strengthening each other to become who we were meant to be. During the last 5 years, I've been teaching a course at Boise State University as an adjunct psychology faculty member, teaching adolescent and emerging adulthood. Through the course, I've taught about 1,000 students so far, and I have refined a set of learning activities into an everyday hero training program which I've titled Roots and Branches. Here's a copy of the student manual. Here's a copy of an accompanying study book. This is a 26-step process that summarizes, in many cases, the best of the best that I've experienced in the last 40 years in terms of trying to help people. I'm working with a grant to help equip all the residents of a rural area of Valley County, Idaho, first through a pilot project grant from the Region 4 Behavioral Health Board, followed by now a 3-year project with the Central Idaho Health Department, funded by a Federal Rural Communities Opioid Response Grant. Concerning this program, imagine incarcerated individuals or people who otherwise aren't able to access the internet completing the program either in English or Spanish on paper, while their loved ones have access to either the paper forms or the online versions, allowing them, when they do have contact with each other, to have common concepts and shared learning experiences to talk about with each other. Also, with the help of my college students, I've developed an online course entitled Out of the Nest and Soaring, which has the subtitle, Successfully Emerging into Adulthood. For years, I've dreamed about and have planned toward a neighborhood or community center designed to be an intergenerational, cross-cultural, interfaith, creative arts center. Imagine, in many cases, older people with lots of time and lots of talents to share, helping younger people with a desire to learn and in need of mentors to together do creative forms of art. Art in this center refers to a multitude of possible activities such as woodworking, fiber arts, mechanics, musical instruments, falconry, rock collecting, family history, anything that local people have as talents to share. Also, older people learning from younger people, but using their mind and their body for creative activities. You can even do such things with people with whom you don't have the same language. I've entitled such a neighborhood gathering place, Center for Abundance. And in this case, the word center is not a noun, but it's an action verb of center for abundance. Here's a diagram that shows how this is combining older and younger, past and future, the me and the we, mind and the body, all in a synergistic growth experience. It also has an economic benefit by helping young people find new interests, turning them into hobbies, turning them into skills, turning them into potential jobs and potential careers. It's a place helping individuals and families connect, survive, strive, and thrive. After sharing with you my background and a number of my resources, I'd like to describe some of the benefits you or others will experience through these resources. Concisely stated, these have been shown to increase inner peace, healthy interdependence on others and God, build resiliency to anxiety and depression and substance abuse, and strengthen individuals physically, socially, psychologically, and spiritually. My most recent book, entitled, Are You Settling for Half of the Rainbow? Dr. Pettit, on the back cover, gives the following commendation. In this, his beautiful and insightful book, Dr. Hulbert points eloquently and simply to the extraordinary benefits of a warm, loving heart. Like a good forest ranger would share pointers to help people prevent getting lost, recognize quickly when they were and find their way back to their home base. So also Dr. Hulbert shares many invaluable learned clues to assist people to experience all of the rainbow and a heart filled with ever-increasing joy and love. Another understanding and tool that participants will experience is symbolized by this picture of a road. This is included in both Sun is Always Shining and Driver's Ed for the Brain. And it deals with how we function in time psychologically. I created this road picture to help understand that the present is where we really live. It's where our body, mind, and spirit are all together, and where we can feel the warmth of love, enthusiasm, peace, and joy. It's also meant to symbolize that if our mind starts reverting on negative things toward the past, I'll call it the rocky past, we feel various gradations of anger, irritation, anger, bitterness, hatred. Similarly, an unhealthy preoccupation with the future is a signal to our being that even though our body is still in the present, our mind has drifted to the past, and we feel various levels of anxiety, of tension, worry, anxiety, fear, and even a panic attack helps us to warn us from going over the deep end. Through these trainings, people can recognize when they are down, not buy into the healthy, limited perspective in such states of mind, and learn to be what's called gracefully down until their natural buoyancy brings them back up. Finally, going full circle, through these trainings, people can develop a deeper realization that the sun is always shining. This picture on the cover of the book shows a murky, cloudy, and probably stinky area where people are alone or not very connected. It also shows a person who's found some steps to go up to a higher realm where there is more light, warmth, peace, and joy, and meaningful relationships with each other and with God. It is my dream to continue sharing these resources, ideally on a grander scale, to reach more people, produce even more resources, and assist as many people as I can to reach their divine destiny. Thank you very much for listening.